Well, each week, a group of insiders joins me to offer perspective on some of the week's top stories. This week, the economic impact of the Indiana State Fair, what it has on the region, the state of Indiana, plus the impact weather is having on the farm economy in the state. And Colts training camp continues, a lot more as well. And joining me this week, our Fagery Baker Daniels partner, Murray Clark. Also, Winston-Terrell Group Principal Robin Winston. And Vox Global Senior Vice President, Francesca Jarosz-Brady. And welcome one and all to the Insiders for another edition. We began in the first half of the show. Robin was out at the Indiana State Fairgrounds, always a fun time to be out there. But there is a business side, certainly to agriculture, but also to the State Fair. The fair itself, and then this Indiana State Fairgrounds, which has changed. You know, it's a 365-day-a-year venue, and they've invested a lot of money to make that a place that people want to go to.
It's also the front door for Indianapolis to a lot of people. I mean, you come down Benford, and a lot of people are coming down that way, lined up. That's their first time they've been in our city. It's a good footprint for our city. They've been smart enough to be diverse in the programming they've had at the State Fair. The whole area, I just think it's great. It's a tremendous boon for our community.
Could you make the argument that the fair, you know, it's been around, I think, since 1852 maybe, but that the relevance, maybe it waned at one point, but is maybe coming back and is greater than it's been because of the focus on the ag biosciences, agriculture, careers in agriculture, and the fair really showcasing that?
I think that's clearly part of it. I also think it's a juggernaut in employing people. There are a lot of people that live in our community that go work at the State Fair, but you also see the residual when you start talking about the people at Reynolds and other places that are ag business. They can showcase what they have at the State Fair, too. I think it's fantastic for us.
On the negative side, or difficult side, I guess, in terms of the state of the ag industry in Indiana, lots of rain in the spring. It's been dry recently, so the weather really wreaking havoc for Indiana farmers around the state. The governor has requested disaster assistance from the federal government for 88 of the state's 92 counties. Sometimes people, I think, Francesca, overestimate or don't look at the economic impact that agriculture has on the state.
Absolutely, and I think the downside you're seeing is with the farming industry. I think the upside, which you mentioned and Robin alluded to as well, is the ag biosciences sector and the great work that groups like AgriNovus are doing to really bring those companies together. And it's really exciting to see Corteva, you know, on the New York Stock Exchange recently. And I think there's promising momentum with some of the startups as well. Yeah. So that's the good news, I think, around that sector.
Yeah, a lot of focus on talent in the agriculture sector and talent overall in Indiana. There was news this week that Ball State University is joining an initiative that's really focused on turning the brain drain and talent leaving the state to the brain gain, bringing it back. Murray, as you look at that, these are efforts we had your fellowship folks on earlier in the show. That's been around 18 years, one of the really first big programs to get at that. Do you think we're gaining as a state in this brain drain issue?
Well, I think it's important that Ball State's involved in the discussion and that higher ed is generally, and Purdue's been a leader, kind of an innovator in this. And I think the way we've talked about brain drain for, 2 decades or more, but I think the efforts today are sophisticated, they're intelligent, and I think it's really important that higher ed's an involved part of that.
And is it a complex issue? I guess you talk about quality of life, quality of place, those types of things, making Indianapolis or Fort Wayne or Evansville, wherever it is, an attractive place where people want to go. You got to have things to do. A lot of elements that kind of go into it, especially when you look at attracting young professionals.
Absolutely. I think job security is a huge part of it too, especially as we look at sort of this next generation, Gen Z, the oldest of whom are 22. They say that the most important thing as they look at jobs is security and pay. So as we continue to really focus on our economic growth, hopefully we can appeal to that generation as well as a place to stay.
You talk Gen Z, we talk GenCon, which recently wrapped up in Indianapolis. Robin, as you look at that event, which is huge, estimated a $70 million impact. The gamers from around the globe really that come here, and that's an event. I think they had 60,000+, maybe 70,000 people at the convention center. You look at the video on the screen now; it gives you an idea. But it just keeps getting bigger, and the impact and the pressure on Indianapolis to have facilities and accommodations to allow for that growth as well.
Facilities and accommodations, but also just what we talked about during RFRA. I mean, if we had not addressed that issue, I doubt GenCon would be here. So what you're seeing is a place that is welcoming. And when you have a community that's welcoming, Maynard Jackson, my mentor, former mayor of Atlanta, their slogan was "the city too busy to hate." When you demonstrate to people, particularly in the environment we're in now, that you're busy and working on bringing people in and welcoming, that's how you get GenCon sticking around for year after year.
Yeah, Murray, as you look at it, and again, that focus on being inclusive and welcoming, but also having the facilities, it's somewhat of an arms race. If you look at the convention business around the country, very competitive. We have a big proposal on Pan Am Plaza for 2 hotels. That's not been scaled back, but maybe delayed a little bit. You think it's a prudent move?
Well, I think this illustrates, well, the growth of the convention business, first of all, is such a positive thing for the city, and the region. But I think what this tells you is that the capacity, the hotel and the room capacity is growing. And we've seen discussion about, you mentioned a couple of the hotel projects. There are others out there kind of percolating as well. And so I think the market studies and the discussion about capacity is interesting. And I think the growth in the convention business helps justify more and more rooms, which again, great from an employment standpoint, economic impact standpoint as well. By the way, Comic-Con, end of this month as well,
yes,
right?
Another one, that's right,
Yeah.
that continues to grow as well. Changing landscape as we switch gears in the media business, not only here in Indianapolis, but around the state. News this week that the parent of the Indianapolis Star is being acquired by New Media, a large corporate media entity. Francesca, as you look at that, new ownership at Channel 13, the NBC station here in Indianapolis, at Wish TV as well. Lots of change. A lot of attention has gone to the newspaper industry. And where is the future of the print industry?
Well, I started my career at the Indy Star, so it's near and dear to my heart. And I think local journalism and regional newspapers are so critically important. So the optimist in me, is hopeful for this deal, but I think probably the more realist is concerned about just the loss of local reporting staff and a move to more consolidated national
Is there
news.
another model out there? I know on the sports side of things, The Athletic is this kind of a new model, online model that seems to be gaining traction.
You're seeing a lot with nonprofits. If you look at Chalkbeat Indiana, which focuses on education news, and there are other models, ProPublica as well. I think it sort of remains to be seen what will work, and we just have to continue to be innovative and hope that we can save it, because it's so critically important.
Lots of change too in the business of sports when you look at collegiate sports. Certainly at the Division I level, it is such a big business. A lot of investment being made in venues, trying to make that game experience important and good for fans. Ross-Ade Stadium at Purdue. The Board of Trustees recently approved another big step toward what could be ultimately a $125 million renovation. A lot of big ideas being thrown around out there. But these types of things, it's a business investment in these programs.
It's a business investment. It's also a confidence maker for the president of the university and for his football coach and for the athletic department. I mean, you don't make that kind of investment unless you're believing your program is going to be successful. They have Braum there now for several years, and they've made that a priority and a commitment. Outstanding athletic director and moving it up. Look at what Cindy Simon-Scott did at IU. Look at the change there. This is becoming recruiting tools now, Gary. So you got to be very careful in trying to recruit people unless you can be competitive.
Yeah, and things like improved Wi-Fi at the stadium, beer sales. I used to have beer sales at football this year. Who would have thought you'd have beer sales? But now most of the Big Ten teams, I think, have it. So it's a changing landscape. Does this continue to escalate?
Well, the football attendance is so important to the budgets of the bigger schools, although the Big Ten schools have done very well with the Big Ten television channel, that kind of differentiates it. So making the spectator experience as enjoyable as possible is so important to these big schools.
Well, hey, I want to get a quick, I mentioned Colts camp. In fact, as we're taping this, the first preseason game for the Colts on tap here. But Westfield, that Grand Park, this idea has just exploded, and now they've got the Colts.
Come across there on a Saturday, you come across and see all the new growth there and people in downtown Westfield, and it's just energy is what I'd say. And also it is doing what we've always talked about in suburbia, and that is people from Indianapolis are going north, being welcome, and then being able to come back. So it's just great. It's tremendous.
Well, with that, we'll put a wrap on another edition of The Insiders. Robin Winston, Francesca Jarosz-Brady, and also Murray Clark. Thanks one and all. We'll be right back.